The following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
Welcome to Aftergate, powered by the Defy Life Network.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is a podcast series highlighting Colgate alumni of color in their professional endeavors aftergate.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is hosted by Alvin Glimpf, aka Al, and Herman Dubois, aka Jerry.
Are y'all ready?
We are doing Aftergate because Colgate University has produced innovators who have changed the world every day, yet many alumni of color and the mainstream Colgate community are unaware of the amazing accomplishments of alums of color.
Are y'all ready?
Welcome to another episode of the podcast Aftergate. This is your boy Alvin Glimpf, co-host. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Herman Dubois. How you doing, homeboy?
All is well. You know, just happy to be alive and free these days. You know, can't take that for granted.
No, you can't take that for granted. There's a war going all around the world, craziness all around the world. None of this is to be taken for granted. And I'm just glad to be here with you always doing this show, Aftergate. For those who don't know, Aftergate is all about interviewing alumni of color from Colgate to just lift up, amplify their accomplishments post-graduation. As you all know, this is season 2.
Yeah.
And all right. Season 1, we had some just fantastic conversations. We're 3 shows in, checking the numbers. Co-hosts, our numbers are increasing. I think it has something to do with our guest, maybe. I also think it has something to do with the coverage that Colgate did in the most recent Colgate magazine. Or it might just be that we just got a dope show going on right here. So one of those, but our numbers is up. People are listening. So make sure you spread the word. Don't just listen, but definitely let other folks know about.
You give me a little idea. We need to come up with some type of incentive, right? Where we can have a little contest. You know, I'm tired of seeing all these damn challenges on social media. Challenge this, challenge. They got challenges for everything, right? So what if we created some incentive? I guess maybe we have to think about who gets to participate, you know, because if you've been on the show, you should be doing this already because we've spoken to you about this. But if you haven't been on the show and you've listened, okay, and something like, you know, the first listener to refer 5 guests that actually sign up,
sign up to be guests, you mean? Like,
in other words, right? If let's say reach out to 5 other Colgate AOC was able to get them to not just listen but sign up and register, but we can see their RSVPs on our calendars.
Right.
We somehow, there's got to be some kind of reward, a give back, because I think people do good with incentives.
So we'll think about what the gift back is. It could be maybe a T-shirt.
We're gonna get Colgate bookstore involved in this.
I'm about to say,
Colgate merchandise coming from Colgate books.
Some type of Colgate merch.
Or maybe we can talk to the financial aid department about a little forgiveness or something like that. You know, reparations, anything of the sort. We could work that out.
I think you're reaching, but it's all good. You don't.
If there's anybody who reaches,
it's me.
It's me.
Nothing wrong with a reach. Nothing wrong with a reach. All right, so I think it's time to bring in our guests. All right.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, I'd like to invite to the Aftergate podcast, class of 2001, Mr. Pablo Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on, but now it's starting to sound like a pyramid scheme. You want me to invite 5 more people?
Hey, this sounds like a funny joke. Like, so what happens when you get 2 cats from Brooklyn and 1 from the Bronx?
Right.
Pyramid scheme.
That was good. That was good.
But that's what's up, man. Good to have you on the show. And nice to meet you. You know, we always like to just be real to our listeners and distinguish a conversation of where it's somebody that we go back, we might have been on campus or we met, or somebody, real talk, we meet and write live and direct. So very nice to meet you.
Likewise, and I really appreciate y'all just for hanging in there and dealing with me so late. I know we're on different coasts, so I really appreciate it. And like I said, I love podcasts, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
No problem. So different coasts. Let's just get it. You are, just for the listeners, living, where you at now?
Well, right now I'm in San Jose, California. Just moved here for work, but I'm originally from New York, from Brooklyn and the Bronx and Far Rockaway. I was born in Far Rockaway, but that's where I actually hail from.
Okay.
Yeah,
What high school?
Well, I didn't go to high school there, but I went to middle school. Sorry, I went to middle school in PS 159 in the Bronx.
Okay.
And then high school, I was in Jersey for high school.
What part of Jersey? Just for all our Jersey listeners.
South Jersey.
That's okay. We got folks from South Jersey. We had a guest or two from South Jersey.
You know, Colgate got folks from everywhere.
Past Camden, Williamstown, near Philly. How far down?
So I'm on the opposite, like right above Atlantic City, actually. So in that area. So yeah, just kind of like in the middle of no man's land.
Gotcha. Let's go back. So you class of 2001. So you would have graduated high school 1997, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Take us back to that time frame, 1997. What's happening in the world that you remember? What's happening in your life? Give us a sense of what the world is like as you're entering Colgate.
I'm getting old, so I don't remember that far. But what happened in 1997? Jesus, that's a hard question for me to answer right now. Ooh, Biggie passed away.
True that.
Yesterday was his 25th anniversary of his passing.
Yes.
So he passed away. That was a big deal for us. I think it was just something that we were not expecting at the time.
No doubt.
And then who was president? I think it was like Bill Clinton was president.
Yes,
and
he was.
Something like that. And it's just a whole bunch of craziness at that time. But yeah, I think the thing that was like really stood out to me at that year was just in high school was, doing my AP classes and trying to get, all the credits that I needed to get. Because with AP, you could get like extra credit for college. So I was really focused on that and making sure that I was able to have enough so I could actually get something before I went to Colgate. But yeah, a lot of interesting things were happening back then. It was kind of a weird time to be in. It felt like it was a good time to be in, not like today. Today kind of feels like we're going backwards, but at the time it felt like it was like something to look forward to for sure.
I mean, there was a lot of party and there was a lot of hanging out. There was definitely a lot of good vibing going on in the mid 90s. Freak Nick for us down in Atlanta, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah,
I bet.
That's another podcast. That's not this one.
Another podcast.
No, right. Talk a little bit about what your high school was like. I think a lot of us think about how much Colgate shaped us, but we obviously had influences about what our high school experience was like, where the demographics, you as a student, on in and out of the classroom. What was that world like for you?
High school, I say, was a mixed bag. It was a mixed bag of rough, and it was a mixed bag of like good times because, I felt like I was prepared in a sense to be admitted to college. In a sense that like I was taking AP classes. I was like, in the gifted and talented program. I was hanging out with all the smart kids. I was doing marching band, which was a lot of fun. Marching band was important for me because, we would spend the summertime practicing for the season, right, for the football season. And in marching band, what I learned so much was that, you really had to focus on music memorization, where you're going to go on the field without looking down, and being able to perform at a level, right? So that was really, pivotal for me. But at the same time, it was in high school that I really kind of learned a lot about American history and world history at the time. And really decided that was going to be like, okay, I'm going to major in history because there was like some really cool stuff that I was interested in, but I also felt like, it was a unique way of thinking. So that was kind of like high school, like the good times of high school. I think the rough times of high school was being in a predominantly white institution, figuring out how to navigate that landscape, right? Because coming from New York City, and I don't know if you remember, like in the 80s, it was kind of like that flight from New York City, like out into the suburbs and the areas like that. So that's kind of like what happened to my family. So we, moved down to Jersey, and then, went to a new high school with all these kids that I've never seen before my whole life. And it was rough. Like a lot of them, they would call me names, like all types of stuff. So, but I don't know how I made it out, but I did make it out. Ended up going, I got accepted to, like, I applied to a number of different schools, but I got accepted to most of them, which was pretty cool. So I felt like, high school was good to prepare me to get into college and be prepared academically, but it definitely was, I think, a handicap for the socialization, right? Because now I'm in New York, hanging out with friends and different types of people, but now I'm in a different school where they don't like people like me, right? Or they don't like people like us. And so it's like now we have to figure out how to navigate that environment and also, succeed academically.
How did you hear about Colgate? Like, so what was that process like of hearing about it, and then actually what kind of led you to come up there and decide this was the place for you?
So honestly, it's funny because, like, I'm a first gen high school graduate in my family, as well as a first gen college graduate, obviously, and still to this day, like, nobody in my family has graduated high school except for myself. And you know, for me, I think the primary determinant of going to Colgate was, first of all, not having any context about what it meant to go to college and what that was like. I mean, I just thought it was like an extension of high school. I'm going to 12th grade, now I'm going to 13th grade. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it felt like to me. But I think the thing that was kind of like the defining factor for me was, like, how far away could I get from this place? And Colgate was pretty much it. Not only was it far from people from New York, it's also far from people in New Jersey. And I was like, okay, cool, I can go far away and just go to this institution that was going to pay my scholarships, going to pay my tuition. So let's do that. But I forgot how I learned about Colgate. I just remember it being like one of those schools, like, it was like I was thinking about a whole bunch of schools. I applied to Princeton, Drexel. Like, it was just a big mix, like schools around the country that I had no idea about. And so I was just like, okay, cool. Colgate's in New York. I love New York. It's further away. So maybe that'll be nice to get away from, just what I've been living through for the previous 17 years or so. So that was kind of like my determining factor.
I've always found it fascinating that for some Colgate alums, their Colgate story is in their family, Colgate is well known. Many people have attended there, and they appreciate the stature or status that this institution brings. And then there's some of us who family never heard of it, couldn't tell you where it is, has no clue about what Colgate is in terms of status. And we're all going there, attending there, walking, taking classes, interacting with each other, taking that Colgate name with us. I just found that fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, going into it blindly, right? Like, not knowing what to expect, but then at the same time, it's like, I think there's always been something in me where it's like, okay, cool, like, I'm going to take a risk on something. Let me take a risk on myself. And that's what it was. I mean, again, I thought it was just like 13th grade. Now, that's the next step. It just happens to be in a different location,
Wow. So give us a sense of then what Colgate is like. So leave South Jersey and you get up to Colgate. What was your experience like? What's that transition like?
Well, a lot of people don't know this about me. I think even my friends from Colgate, maybe some of them might know this actually, but my parents never actually took me up there. I remember my first day going up to Colgate was like me getting on a bus and, like, I had $500 in my pocket, and I was like, okay, cool. This is like, how are we going to get ourselves up here, right? So I had packed all my stuff up from South Jersey to New York, right, to Port Authority, and then catching the short line bus at the time from New York to to Binghamton, and then from Binghamton to bus up to Hamilton. It's just, I remember that journey because I ended up getting stuck I took, I guess, a bus to Utica, and I was like low key stuck in Utica for the longest time, and like somebody had to go pick me up at the train station and bring me back to Colgate because I had no idea where we were going. But yeah, it was like I'll never forget that because I remember that morning to a T. It was like it was so early in the morning, just like taking a bus and not having people to go with. But that's my first memory of Colgate. Just
So
of
just so
getting.
I'm clear, your first day, you're leaving home as a high school graduate going to Colgate, and you get lost and get stuck in Utica.
I get lost and get stuck in Utica, the
Okay.
train station over there.
Wow.
That was all part of the test. I was like, okay, if he can find Colgate from Jersey, that's that last box on the admission criteria.
But I mean, honestly, though, I think really appreciate some first gen stories. I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. That's
that's
what
the
makes first gen first gen. I
right.
think that too many times the terminology first generation is thrown around because it's so common. But when you really take the time to analyze what first generation means in context to different things. So we're applying it to college. I too was first gen. And so there was nothing I could converse with my parents about to get feedback or an opinion on anything college other than their thing was you're going, like we just know you need to go to college to do better in life. And so our job is to make sure you don't get shot or locked up in high school and go to college, figure it out. Like the rest is on you. We got you this far, go. And, at 18, I'm like, all right, let's go, But in hindsight now, when I think about the position that puts your average 18-year-old in who doesn't have a support system and who doesn't have anyone as a point of reference that can say, hey, this is what you might go through at college, or these are people you can go talk to, or this is what I went through when I was there. It really, really sort of, I think, adds a thickness to like the grit that first gens have to go through because there is no one else. They are the trailblazer in their family line.
Yeah, and Alvin, I kind of wanted to touch upon something you had mentioned earlier about like, they don't know about Colgate, they don't even care about Colgate. And like that was my family. My family were like, they couldn't care less that I went to college. Like they were so old school that like my father was the type of person to be like, hey, you graduated from school, now go out and work and shine some shoes and make some money that way. And I was like, okay, cool. Like that's not going to be the answer for me. But that really kind of and that's part of like why they didn't feel like they needed to go up there, because it's like, oh, this is like they're the old type of people that like they feel like, oh, when you go to school you just sit down on your ass and you don't do anything all day. But like like that was their mentality. And I understand that because they came from a different time, right? Like
Right.
but like when you had said that, I was like, yeah, like they were really weren't like I'm sure that they might have been like, oh, okay, cool, but it wasn't like there wasn't like a celebration, unfortunately. And like that's the kind of stuff that like I like sometimes I think about it, sometimes I don't really think about it that much because it's like it's just out of my head. But at least to your point, it's just like just setting being a trailblazer and setting the tone for what's to come. And I don't really know why, like I have a younger brother and sister, but I think that they chose a different path in life. I think because of what they've seen, this is what they're doing now. So I can't really speak for them, but I would always, I use my influence on people that like on current students, right? So I'm involved with the school in some ways, right? Like through AOC and things like that. And even at work, like there are people that I'll be mentoring. And that's the beauty that came out of my situation, is like using that experience to help others out that I see maybe have similar experiences. And even if they're not my biological family, they're part of the family, right? Like they're part of our family.
So just going back to Colgate for a little bit, were there any extracurricular activities you was all?
Yeah, so I think for extracurriculars, I feel like I'm forgetting everything, but like I had a radio show at like I think like 6 or 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Okay. How
That
long? How many
was
semesters?
Oh, I forgot. It was quite a bit. It was
Okay.
quite a bit. Quite a bit of semesters.
I was a radio DJ, so I get it. I appreciate that life.
I will say, if full transparency, hope nobody from Colgate is actually listening, but I have ACD.
Oh, whoa, stop, time out. No, we hope a lot of people listening. And if you got a CD, so what? Like they owe you more than a CD. So we ain't worried about a little CD that you take.
I know.
Yeah, that's preparation right there.
Right. What was your major? What'd you major in?
So I did a double major in biology and history. So A, because I love the subjects, and B, because I had AP credit, but I majored in, that was a double major in both of those. Throughout the years.
Time out. You don't major in biology just because you happen to have a AP credit from high school. Listen, there's plenty of people who come with a biology AP credit and is like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm good.
Well, I was part of the OUS SMI program. Okay. So we would start in the summertime, and so we would hang out during the summertime on campus doing like research and stuff. So I think I spent almost every single summer over there, just doing some type of research in the science program. Okay. And that's where I met some cool professors, some not so cool professors, but that was pretty cool, because I can tell you right now, the people that I was with in that program, we're still friends to this day.
That's what's up.
Absolutely. What was your residential experience like? Where'd you live your 4 years?
So it was East Hall as a freshman. Then it was HRC. And then it was like La Casa, Bunch House. Yeah, and I think that was like maybe like one other house. But yeah.
Okay.
East Hall, my first year in HRC.
Enough said. All you had to say was East Hall, and it was just silence.
Then HRC. Right. So when you look back at your time, what do you look at as your accomplishments, things that you're proud of? How would you characterize that?
I think that being at Colgate did a couple of things. First of all, one thing I will say, the credit that they deserve at Colgate is they really instill in you this academic rigor, right? You really have to work hard. Like, and I don't know if they just did that because we're Black and brown, or that's just how the professors were, but that's something that I really appreciated, was just this process of critical thinking, right? Like learning how to be a critical thinker was like, above everything else, was super important. Like it's so influential even into my job today, my life today, right? To be a critical thinker. Not a lot of people can do that. So that was something that I really, really value from the academic part of that. And then as far as like the personal and personal development was like discovering who I was, right? Because for the longest time, it was like, who am I? Like being in a school where, my identity was questioned, as far as high school, and then coming to a college where I'm around Black and brown people, right? Like we all hang out in the same corner that in Frank Dining Hall, right? We all hung out in HRC, but there was like, there's actual books about that. There's a book called like, Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together? And it's like, that made perfect sense to me, right? But just becoming, learning about myself, developing into a person, right? And just kind of understanding my identity, I think was really pivotal at Colgate. And, I think that could be the truth for a lot of people, but sometimes people, they, like, I know people that went to Colgate that haven't really changed since Colgate, right? But I know myself has changed and some other folks have changed, but that's what it was.
We're going to take a pause right here and give some shine to our sponsor. And then we're going to circle back and do a wrap up of this conversation with Pablo Gonzalez.
Yes, sir.
So this episode is sponsored by Hope Murals. Hope Murals is a nonprofit that provides adolescent youth with an interactive experience of creative expression via an urban arts platform that stimulates both mental and physical development. Please visit their website at www.hopemurals.org to learn more and find ways you can support the work they do.
All right, we are back. Appreciate our sponsor, Hope Murals. Make sure you check out their website, hopemurals.org, and see all of the amazing things that they are doing with urban arts and our youth. And be on the lookout for things that they are doing outside of Florida and states like Georgia and New York, and just on a real talk, follow them, support them. Amazing organization. If you too want to be a sponsor, make sure you email us at aftergatepodcast@gmail.com. Check us out, show us some love, and make sure you also show some love to our network, the Defy Life Network. Now that we done handle all of that, I like to come back and start this conversation back up. And as always, Pablo, before we jump back in, we always like to get our guest opinion on a particular subject. Us all being from New York, I would love to get your thoughts on, we got a new mayor, Eric Adams. And so curious if you got any thoughts or opinions on how's he doing as a mayor and what you might see going forward.
My thoughts on Eric Adams has been kind of, I'm kind of disappointed. And the reason why I'm disappointed about Eric Adams as mayor is because I think he's just kind of, the actions that he's taken from the beginning of his administration has not been good for our community. I think in New York, certain people, not even just in New York, but just in our country in general, certain people feel like the answer to everything is to add more police, right? And, his first order of business was really to kind of impact 3 different areas of policing in New York, right? He wanted to bring back not stop and frisk, sorry. He wanted to bring back the undercover crimes unit, the people that, run at you with, the plainclothes unit. They're the people that can jump you from the street, not identify themselves, and arrest you for no reason, right? He wants to bring that back. His police commissioner, although, yes, she is a Black woman, that's great. However, her first order of business is to see if there was a way to remove bail reform, right? So bail reform is something in New York that's going to be passed by the state, but his administration actually wants to refute it. They want to fight it. They don't think that there should be bail reform. And when I think about bail reform, I think about Khalif Browder. And when I think about Khalif Browder, I will never change my mind about that. And then the third thing is he brought in a commissioner for the corrections department that wanted to reinstitute solitary confinement after it had been sort of taken out of Rikers. And again, I think about the dozens of folks that are there that are purely there because they haven't committed a crime. Maybe they just happen to be undocumented. Maybe they happen to be sort of swept up in the current of the quote unquote criminal justice system. And so I think about them and what they have to deal with, right? Being on Rikers or other prisons. And so I say that to say that I think that type of thinking is misguided. Our country is definitely very heavy-handed when it comes to policing. A statistic I saw the other day was that the NYPD budget is probably close to $11 billion. Living in California, I could tell you I'll see more police in one day in New York than I have seen in the 2 or 3 years that I've been here. No lie, right? As soon as I go, so I'm actually flying back tomorrow or tonight. As soon as I get back tonight, I'm sure I'll see dozens and dozens and dozens of cops, right? And another fun fact is, the NYPD budget's almost $11 billion. The budget of the Ukrainian army right now is not even half of that. So I'm just thinking to myself, how much resource and, human resource, financial resource goes into this institution that is really designed to kind of terrorize us, terrorize Black and brown people, terrorize poor people. And so I think this administration, I'm not here for it. Would love to see changes. I thought there were some changes coming along, but now I feel like we're going backwards. That's what I'm going to say about that right now.
Well, all right. and how long has Brother Adams been in office now?
Since January 1st.
Right. So he's coming up on his pretty soon 100-day first quarter of the year, and sound like his report card is We're looking like a C minus right now, huh?
Nah, I would say an F.
An
I
F.
would give it
Wow.
an F.
Wow. Just
Straight up.
Absolutely.
straight F. Okay. Okay. Well, with that being said, we'll see where the next quarter ends up. Hopefully he can turn it around for all of our sakes. I still have all my family up in New York. Alvin still got some of his family up there. You're flying back in, so let's keep them in our prayers. With that being said, talk to us a little bit about sort of, okay, now you're graduating Colgate, and you have this, you're where you're at now. Walk us through sort of some of the highlights of what happened. You graduate Colgate, and what's next for you professionally, academically, personally, socially. Just walk us
Yeah.
through the last those like next decade, so to speak.
The last 2 decades.
Yeah.
It's a decade now. So I graduated right before 9/11, and I don't know if you've had other folks from 2001, but I remember that because a lot of things just kind of went left, right? And people that had job offers, they got rescinded. A whole bunch of just churn or just chaos was happening at that time. And so for me, what I ended up doing was I had a professor who had been like kind of a mentor for me, and um, he had been abroad as an individual, and I'd never gone to do any study abroad program. I never traveled, and so he was like, "Yeah, maybe you could think about working on teaching overseas." And so I actually, in November of 2001, I actually went to teach English in Taiwan. I ended up staying there for about 4 years, and that was a pretty interesting experience because I'd never done that before. And I said before I like to take risks, and that was like a big risk that I was taking, as a young adult at the time. And then when I came back, I actually came back to New York in around 2005, and I started working at Apple. Um, and at Apple, I started off working in a store, and then from there, I went into doing events for Apple. So I did events in New York with Apple for about, I would say, close to 13 years. And that was a lot of fun because, I got to meet so many different people. I got to meet Kendrick, J. Cole, like all these people that were just up and coming, right before they kind of blew up as an artist. So that was really exciting for me. And then in 2018, I felt like I hit a ceiling. So I actually left Apple, and then I decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna move out of New York and move out west just to see what's out there for me, right? Move to the Bay Area. So I left Apple, left New York, came to the Bay Area in 2018, and then I started working at this company called Slack. That was a contract job, and I was doing events for them for a while. And then after that, I went over to this company called Thermo Fisher, which is like a biotech company, and that I only stayed there for about 6 months before I quit. But that I was also running events for them, but I was running events for them across North America, so I was traveling all the time and super busy. But it wasn't really the right fit for me. And then somebody came knocking on my door from Apple and invited me back. And so now I'm back at Apple. Been here since right before the pandemic, and I'm a senior events coordinator for the headquarters. So basically, I'm running internal events for the company, for the employees, doing all kinds of cool stuff for them, and that's where I've been ever since. But those are kind of like the I would say the touchstones in my career over the past 2 decades, and as you said, mostly stayed at Apple. But during that time, I took the LSAT. I was thinking about going to law school, and I did fairly well on the LSAT. But then I found out I couldn't afford law school, and you need money for that, and if you don't have scholarships. So that was kind of like TBD on the table for now. But if I have an opportunity to go to law school, that's something I would definitely consider. So that's been like professionally, academically. As far as socially, like I'll see, I've been to a couple of reunions, and hung out with a lot of classmates from Colgate. And then over the years, I think I noticed that like once it hit like the 30s, like the mid 30s to 40s, that people started having families, they started having babies, you know. Like I think all of my friends except for one has several children, and so things have kind of settled down for them, and they've been obviously focusing on their families, whereas like me, I'm still single, don't have kids that I know of.
Good for you.
So
Knock on
I'm
some
still
wood somewhere.
Yeah,
knock on some wood
I got it.
somewhere.
I got it. I got it. I
Right,
got it.
right.
But yeah, that's where this journey has taken me so far. So we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
So you class of 2001, us class of 1991. We should be crossing paths at reunions in the future because, you know, we will those milestone reunions we will share.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
looking forward to that. Based on your career path, what you just described, I'm
Mhm.
curious when you look back at your Colgate experience, is there anything you would have done different? Is there anything you wish you had known or tried, considering your path now?
Oh, absolutely. I think and I think I speak for a lot of the first gen people, and not even necessarily first gen people, but a lot of black and brown people, right? It's just navigating the workspace after school, right? I think um if I wanted to change anything differently, I think I would spend more time on figuring out like, okay, well, what do I need to do to prepare myself to join a workforce, right? And not to join the workforce be just to be working for my entire life, but to be smart about it, like picking the right opportunities that would make sense for me. And also, um I think that I should have stayed committed to going to law school when I was younger, because I really wanted to do it. But at the time I was like, okay, cool, like I can do this, I can do that, I can do all these different things. I have a double major, so what? But if I could go back, I would say, focus on what was important to get me into law school. Because I find that like now, if I like, as far as like what I would love to be doing is to be um representing people, right? Representing black and brown people in the criminal justice system, and fighting for them so that I can, help them. So I think you don't necessarily need a law degree to do that, but I think having a law degree gives you some type of credibility that people will trust you, to help them. And so that's something that I wish I would have like done differently. I don't regret anything about my life now. I think it's at a good place, and I realize I've always known that you have to be ready for things to change, right? You have to be ready to go left, you have to be ready to go right, depending on you have to be ready to change your mind about things. I think that that's okay with that. I'm okay with that. So yeah, those are the things I would do differently. Spend some more time in a career services center, that's for sure.
Yeah, that spot.
That
So,
spot.
going back a little further now, knowing what you know about your Colgate experience, what might you have told a 17-year-old Pablo coming out of South Jersey that might have changed what the experience at Colgate was like for you? And then,
Ooh.
kind of piggybacking off of what the question that Alvin asked, you're 20 years removed now, you're in this labor force, you kind of shed some light on it, but what advice would you have given to your, 22-year-old self about outside of going to law school, just how would you have navigated what kind of life coaching would you have given yourself 20 years ago?
um I think 20 years ago, I think it would have been important for me to understand that it's not enough to just have knowledge, academic knowledge, or even doing well on tests and things like that. I think something that I've learned over the years is like you really have to develop the skill called influence, so that the people that you're working with can see your vision and can support you in executing that. So I think I always used to be the kind of person that was like, okay, cool, like what can I learn for myself, right? How much knowledge can I absorb? But that wasn't really helpful when having conversations with managers and supervisors over the years, and trying to figure out like how to move from one step to the next. And like I said, I felt like, after 13 years at Apple, I felt like I did hit a ceiling because, I wasn't really sure like what the next step was going to be. And then funny enough thing was it took me the time to leave and kind of get outside of that environment, to really kind of see, oh, okay, this is what my capabilities are. Here's what I can do. Here's how I can influence people. And then, coming back has been amazing. I will say, sort of just a kind of preface that in between leaving and then coming back, I actually, I started to develop my creative skills in photography. So something that I've always loved to do. Never had a camera. So I think when I quit my last job, I ended up like using my savings to buy a really expensive camera, and I never regretted it because like now it's just like I focus so much on that creative aspect of myself personally.
Mhm.
But definitely, like that's another thing I might have said to myself back then was like, hey, what do you like? What is something that you enjoy? Biology and history are great because you have the AP credits, but like,
Yeah.
what do you actually enjoy? What's inspiring to you? Like what kind of like what's easy for you to do, and you don't really have to think too much about it. And that was like one of those things. It's like I really love photography, but I never really acted on it, because I felt like, well, I didn't take any classes, so I'm not a professional photographer. But again, you don't need that.
I have a funny photography story that at Colgate I took actually a class. It was black and white back when it was 35 millimeters manuals, and you had, and I thought it was gonna be what we called gut classes. I can score easy A maintain that GPA, little elective. I'm a junior. I'm playing baseball for Colgate, so we're traveling a lot. The class was in the spring semester. And I had one of those professors that just did not support the student athlete schedule. So if you miss class, they took it personal. And I'm like, yo, I'm traveling, 2-3 days a week. And I thought I had the, great idea of using traveling to these other colleges throughout central New York State to be my landscape for my photography, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
thinking, Colgate Hamilton's bad enough. You got to see where I'm playing baseball at up here in upstate in snow flurries. This is ridiculous. Okay, the Yankees are never going to see me playing upstate New York. Okay, and I almost got an F in the class simply because the professor felt like I had missed too many classes to
Mhm.
possibly get any decent grade because I wasn't there for the lectures, right? And photography was lecture, and it was development. I didn't
Mhm.
realize how expensive the class would be because the chemicals you have to buy, the paper you have to buy. I borrowed different people's cameras because I didn't have a camera. Uh, Point was that to this day, I've always wanted to pursue photography on an entirely different level. Colgate had a really good photography department, and I actually enjoyed that class despite almost catching an F.
Yeah, I think the challenge I'm currently learning about photography is, I take good pictures. Like I have an eye for photography, but it's like I think my challenge is like, what story am I trying to tell?
Uh-huh.
And that's something that I think you have to really think about in any type of creative thing that
Mm-hmm.
you do. Is like, what story am I trying to tell? Like, so what? I take a nice picture. What's the audience or the viewer going to think about it? And sometimes it doesn't really matter. Like photography could just be for myself. It doesn't have to be for anybody.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, that's always good to have in the back of my mind. It's like I'm gonna take a picture, but if I got hit by a bus and somebody's looking at the picture, what are they gonna know from this picture?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Part of why we are doing this is to give our fellow AOC community an opportunity to hear about initiatives or things someone might want to promote and share with the community. So here's your platform, here's your opportunity to, if there's any initiative, any organization, any topic that you just want to promote to get out there, that we can just leverage all the people that are listening. Here's your shot. What you got?
Well, I am actually part of some initiatives with AOC, particularly with this program to develop the third century plan and what that's going to look like academically for students of color. And it's kind of a work in progress, and I haven't done too much work with it, but initially, the university I think is trying to really um, take a genuine take genuine initiative with just kind of creating a better environment for students of color, right? I think today for somebody to say that they've had the same experiences that the three of us had
Mm,
decades ago, I think there's still a lot of work to do. um, I shared a lot of feedback with Brian Casey about some of the stuff that I thought, and one of the first things that I thought was really important was like, okay, well, you know, you talk about the value of diversity. um, it's not it's not front and center on a website, right? If you go to a company's website, they usually have like their typical stuff, but they also have a page for their values. And so I really wanted to see that be like front and center for Colgate. And they really took the time to do that, because it's like, it's one thing to say, we support diversity initiatives, but it's another thing to really kind of, speak truth to power. So I would love to continue to see, the president continue on that direction of making this a priority and not just kind of a talking point. And if there's one thing that I wanted to say to the community is, you know, you're preaching to the choir. I'm glad that we can have these conversations as a group with AOC and Colgate leadership, but I would really love to see these conversations with the President's Club, the people that are spending millions and millions of dollars to contribute to the school. Like, I want to have those conversations with them. I want to see their perspective, because I almost feel like the conversations that we might have as a community in AOC is very different from what the leadership is having with that particular community, right? Like, yes, an initiative is to spend $10 million on a new, a renovated Seven Oaks golf clubhouse, but how else could that money be used to, to support students of color, right? So I really want to see some more action in those directions, and create a more equitable experience for those students, because it's just a shame that they have to deal with the same stuff that we dealt with. Who knows if that'll ever change, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever eradicate it. I'm too much of a cynic to say it'll be gone for good. But I am old enough and had enough birthdays to know we've made progress, right? Things are better than when I was there. When we were there was better than people before us, right? And so I think, to your point about these conversations, I think that's part of the progress, that there are people who have been involved on the board of trustees, people that, not all of them, but some of them look like us. Some of them that look like us, I actually respect and believe that when they're in that room, they are speaking for those who aren't in the room. I think when people listen to our podcast, I think you hear some of that, of the people who have been fighting that fight, and they'll share some of their war stories, and they'll share some of the instances that actually have resulted in changes in how things look, not just for students, but even how things look for how they've engaged alumni and value our experience. And so never enough, in the sense of we've arrived. But what sustains me and what I hope will sustain others enough to keep pushing the reality that things are better. And so I think part of our Colgate story, for people like all of us who come up there with no real clue of what Colgate is really about and how to survive it, is that there are people before us always looking after us. And because people looked after them, and we are helping each other navigate this Colgate experience, even though our families and our neighborhoods might not be doing that navigation. It's really the Colgate community, the community of color, the faculty of color, and even some institutes, even the institution, because the Office of Undergraduate Studies, that to me is a big part of how a lot of us make it through. Yeah, I appreciate your perspective on what you just said, though.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We thank you for being on the show. We want to not only highlight your story, but highlight your perspective, that know that there are other people who share that same perspective. And so sometimes you need to have it heard on a podcast and there'll be a listener that's like, oh wow, I thought I was the only one that, yeah. Okay, I really was feeling that, Pablo. Now I got the courage to say, can I sign up and be on? Because I didn't know we could have that kind of talk on the show. And that's one of the beauties of what we wanted this platform. We wanted folks to be able to really be transparent, be direct. In some cases, it's been more than we expected. We've had people acknowledge a sense of healing through the show because they've not been able to talk about the experience that they had to anybody in their family or constituents because it was such a unique experience. And so when you mentioned one thing about the academic rigor that Colgate prepared you for, which I took definitely a thumbs up for. I also think about the social rigor that Colgate prepared me for, because I didn't have the experience that you had in high school. But coming out of Colgate, what I realized, it was a microcosm of what I was getting into in the world. And had I had the insight to really, just try to process more of the Colgate experience rather than survive it and fight it and transform it and revolutionize it. I think that there might have been some things like networking, right? That I knew it's something we all talk about doing in the professional world, but at Colgate, I was only networking within our community of color because I just had no tolerance for anything else. And yet the arrogance and yet the naiveness of me to think that I was coming into a world that was going to allow me to not interact with non-people of color. Who the hell was I fooling? So trial by error, now I network with the best of them, but it's taken me a couple decades.
Appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners. This has been another episode of Aftergate Season 2. Make sure you check us out on all of your favorite streaming platforms. And as always, Aftergate is always powered by the Defy Life Network. And check out all of our the dope podcasts that are coming in the future. So show us some love. On that note, we out. Peace.
Peace.
Shh. You hear that? Listen closer. That, my friend, is the deafening sound of focus. It drowns out all the useless noise that can clutter the moment. Naysayers don't exist. Haters? Smaters? The peanut gallery? Who's that? When you in your zone, all that noise and all that buzz is just elevator music. So, enjoy your journey, focus on your goal, and bask in the quiet roar that is progress. Because when it's your time to shoot that shot, spit that verse, or close that deal, the only voice that matters is yours. Defy Life.